Part 3. Many people stood on the city walls with Nia, watching the battle unfold. While many of them were people who had been swayed to the Saucer King's side after he had rescued them, they were not the only ones here. There were priests and paladins here as well. Nia could not see Remedios from where she was standing, but she was close enough that Nia could hear her speak. The only members of the command staff who were absent were Gustav and Casbond. Everyone watching the battle was silent. No. It was simply because there were no words to describe the battle. They should have known this. The members of Blue Rose had said that Jaldabaoth's difficulty rating was above 200. In other words, this was like fighting a huge dragon in the form of a human. Just fighting said battle in the land of men would lead to a great tragedy. They ought to have been grateful that only a single city district was destroyed. Many houses were on fire and white plumes of smoke reached to the sky, but the total casualties were almost nil. While watching the battle, she had seen cyclones, blazes, strokes of lightning and other tremendous manifestations of power that were beyond man's knowledge running wild. Each of these discharges of energy could have easily taken countless lives. Especially, it's beautiful. What had truly moved Nia's heart was the ball of white light that she had seen twice. It was power which consumed everything and made it disappear without a trace. It felt like something good to Nia, although she could not confirm whether it was truly the work of divine might. The incredible devastation she saw in the wake of the light's disappearance frightened her, but her admiration of its great power had won out in the end. It seems the fighting is still going on. I can't believe the battle still isn't over after using all those spells. Jaldari is really strong. She had heard about it, and she had even seen it with her own eyes. Yet, Nia's thinking had still been too naive. That naivete was now thoroughly eradicated. The king she served, though only temporarily, and only within the Holy Kingdom, was fighting. She felt that searing his heroic visage into her eyes was only natural as part of her squire's duties, which was why Nia was keeping watch from here. Yet, if she could, Nia tightly squeezed the bow she was carrying. If one looked closely, they would see several other shapes battling the Saucer King in addition to Jaldari. Those were the maid demons, who were rated at difficulty 150. Nia could not do anything but admire the Saucer King's power for fighting so many powerful adversaries at once without giving ground. It was at this moment that Nia finally realized something about herself. She envied the people of the Sorceress Kingdom, those people who were protected by justice. How happy they must be to live in a country ruled by such a being. Weakness is a sin, so one must become strong, or humbly accept justice similar to that of His Majesty. At this point, Nia voiced the words she had been mulling over all this time. The way she repeated it over and over sounded very much like a prayer. Suddenly, there was a large explosion as a meteor fell. It threw the carcasses of buildings high into the air, and they rained back down to the earth amidst a shower of gravel and sand. Captain, isn't Jaldari too powerful? Yes, that's right. The Saucer King, His Majesty, is also incredibly strong. If he becomes an enemy of our nation, what will we do? Yes, that's right. Captain. Yes, that's right. She could hear Remedios talking to three paladins. The paladins asking her questions had probably not seen how Remedios had ended up being toyed with like a child even after unleashing the Holy Sword's power and stabbing Jaldari in the back. Maybe they didn't see it. Still, anyone who saw that fight would have understood. Both the Saucer King and Jaldari were unimaginably powerful. Still, it was too late to think about things like that now. No. If His Majesty could take this country under his rule, we would not have to suffer demi-human invasions again. Nia was startled at how perfect that idea was, and even a little afraid. Merging with the Holy Kingdom. If he were a frightening tyrant, even I wouldn't think about it. But the Saucer King isn't like that. He is justice. In that case, I ought to gather people who feel the same way as me. Nia pondered the matter. Many people had come to respect and idolize the Saucer King. There were those who were drawn to his overwhelming power. Those who were grateful for being freed from suffering, those who hated the demi-humans and who were glad that he had taken revenge on their behalf, and many such others. From them she would select those people who had always been praying for the peace of this country, and then let them hear her words. Nia knew that she was still young and lacked life experience. However, adults with good sense could stop Nia if they felt that her judgment was in error. Let's start by looking among my subordinates in the archery unit. There were people among them who had lost their loved ones and harbored hate in their hearts. It might be better to try persuading them, because Nia could understand how they felt. As she pondered this, she heard a doom as an exceptionally large explosion rang out. After that, a tall building began to collapse far in the distance. The Saucer King would not have destroyed that building for no reason. Nia narrowed her eyes to try and see what was going on, but she could not tell what was happening in the building as it collapsed amid spilling clouds of dust. It was followed by a massive stroke of lightning from the sky. It would seem he was working towards some objective here, as she had expected. After a while, all manner of spells wrecked the city, and the situation repeated itself. Nia was uneasy. That they were incredible spells went without saying, but could the Saucer King's mana really hold out? Nia shook her head and banished the fear and unease from her heart. It'll be fine. The Saucer King must have taken all this into account. He's already wasted so much mana on this country, but even so. Still, hypothetically, if Jaldari won, there would be no salvation for this world, only despair. What should she do if that happened? Your Majesty, I'm counting on you. And then, two shapes soared into the sky, as though Nia's wish had gotten through. The first to ascend trailed darkness in his wake, while the one pursuing him flapped his crimson wings and left a streak of fire behind him. The fact that the mates were not pursuing them meant one thing: the Saucer King had defeated those difficulty 150 monsters among monsters while battling Jaldari. He's amazing. Nia was so moved that she shivered. His Majesty is more powerful than Jaldari. Indeed. There was no need to think anything else. In turn, the mates were far weaker than Jaldari, who was a notch below the Saucer King. That was why he could defeat them while fighting Jaldari. Nia struggled to contain her delight. As she carefully engraved the greatness of the person she respected into her eyes, she was so filled with joy that it seemed like it would explode out of her. Nia's heart pounded, to the point where it almost hurt. They were all watching a scene that would one day be enshrined in a heroic saga. No, that's not right. It would seem they were going to fight again in the air. Crimson spheres and glowing spheres blossomed in the sky. Each of these spells could probably destroy an entire city district by themselves, and they were hurling them at each other in wild flurries. However, they looked kind of cute from a distance. Even so, that was an exchange of power within a realm that mankind could never reach. This is... As she looked out the corner of her eyes, she saw the people lining the city walls gulping as they saw all this. It would seem that they understood as well. They watched the aerial battle in silence, with earnest looks on their faces. Someone put his hands together in prayer, and the people beside him followed suit, and soon almost everyone on the city walls had their hands together as they looked to the sky. It felt like they were at worship. This is mythology. Nia did not know how much time had passed, but eventually, there was a commotion among the people. Before everyone's eyes, one of the shapes in the sky fell towards the east, and then it vanished. The battle was over. As everyone watched closely, the removing shape slowly descended. Nia's vision was better than most, and so she saw it first. It shocked her so much that she had to press her hand over her mouth. When the others saw the crimson fire, the city walls were silent. However, nobody tried to flee. Everyone who had seen the battle knew that there was no point in running. With a flap of his fiery wings, the victor, Jaldari, showed himself. Though he was the victor in name, he was a tragic sight. His entire body was covered in electrical scorch marks. Half his face seemed to have been crushed, and his deep wounds oozed fresh blood. Perhaps it was due to its temperature, but the blood sizzled as it touched the city walls, and the sound did not stop for a moment. No words could have described the intensity of their battle better than the way he looked now. No way. A weighty, yet somewhat pained voice echoed across the city walls, as though to wipe away Nia's muttering. What a mighty opponent. One of the strongest I faced since morn. I underestimated him. How foolish. Leading the demi-humans nearly became meaningless. However, he is dead. Nia could not believe this. Therefore, she cried out, "You're lying." Jaldari turned his intact eye toward Nia, but she did not budge despite being bathed in the gaze of a creature from a completely different order of life. The intense emotions within her heart left no room for fear to enter. I am not lying. His Majesty is very bad at jokes. So you're lying, right? I am not lying. The words Jaldari had repeated hit Nia hard enough to shatter her soul. The world seemed to shake under her feet. Nia instantly understood why the Saucer King had lost to Jaldari. There was no need to even think about it. It was simply because this country lacked Blue Rose's evil AA and Darkness's Nabe, the two magic casters who could hold the Maid Demons at bay. No, there was another reason apart from that. If that undead had been in top condition, I might have been defeated instead. But to think he actually expended his mana for the sake of humans like you. Truly, he was a fool who did not know his priorities. For that, I thank you. I knew it. I knew it. Weakness truly is a sin. Nia was absolutely certain that she was correct. For that I shall reward you. The reward shall be your lives. What do you mean? Jaldari snorted in delight at the question from an unknown source. I'm saying that I will spare you. At least, for now. Someone sighed in relief, but Nia was furious. Bullshit. 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 It's all a pack of lies. Everything you say is a lie. Who would believe what a devil says? It seems you're unable to accept reality. Are you mad, human? Pitiful. Jaldari pointed to Nia. The sap. I see, and then he immediately withdrew the finger. What's wrong, Jaldari? You intend to provoke me and thus prove I am lying? Is losing your life worth that much? I cannot understand it, but it seems to be the case. Nia's teeth creaked as she clenched them. Jaldari had to be lying. He had to be a liar, the kind who would tell a ridiculous lie like the Saucer King was dead. I will not allow it. Your lives have been saved. Now then, I will return for now. I must recover from these wounds. During that time, you may weep your tears of despair. As Jaldari was about to take off with a flap of his wings, Nia's hands moved with a mind of their own. She readied her bow, and let loose a shot. She had fired from directly behind him, without giving any warning of her intentions. However, Jaldari immediately turned and seized the arrow. Despite his terrible wounds, he was still very agile. Jaldari turned to face Nia, and then his eyes went to Nia's bow, the ultimate shooting star super. After that, his wrath-twisted feature changed slightly. Oh, what an incredible weapon this is. I haven't seen a weapon like this in so long. That was close. It almost finished me off. Jaldaри gesticulated wildly with his limbs as he said that. He seemed composed but also quite anxious. What kind of weapon is this? How was it made? As if I'd tell you. What on earth is he thinking? Nia's mind boiled over with scorching hate. How could she tell this liar what she had learned from the Saucer King? How could I tell a liar like you? Moo, eh? Don't tell me. Was it made by Runecraft? Nia's heart lurched for a moment as he hit the nail on the head. Although she had managed to calm down a little, as her broken heart recalled the compassionate figure of the Saucer King once more, her anger reawakened. You're wrong. Nia screamed like she cared for nothing else, and Jaldaри groaned. Taking that as an opening, Nia fired again. Her next target was his feet, which were hard for the hands to reach. This time, Jaldari frantically moved his feet to avoid the arrow. He's wary of it. Maybe this bow could. There could only be one reason why Jaldari had so desperately evaded her shot when he had been indifferent to being stabbed in the back by the holy sword. What else could it be, if not that this bow could harm him? A wave of regret assaulted Nia as her eyes filled with tears. She realized that she should have joined that battle, even if she would have perished swiftly. If she could have hit him with the ultimate shooting star super, then she should have taken part, even if it was just to be a shield. If she had, then maybe. Nia launched another arrow. Jaldari moved his head. The arrow missed and flew off to parts unknown. Hit, damn you. She fired again. And again. But none of her shots found their mark. Despite his size and his severe wounds, Jaldari had still evaded Nia's attacks with startling ease. Rune. Shut up. Nia fired another arrow to shut Jaldari up. However, it too missed. Why? Why isn't anyone attacking? She could understand their inability to strike Jaldari because he was airborne. However, even so, how could they simply let the lying demon who had killed the most merciful Saucer King go free? Moo. Well, I guess it can't be helped. No. Greater teleportation. Jaldari suddenly vanished. Get back here. Nia looked around. All she saw were the wide-eyed faces of people who were shocked by what Nia had done. Jaldari was nowhere in sight. Motherfucker. He ran away. Calm down. Remedios shouted. The angry cry of a mighty being could exert a pressure of its own, and normally it would have brought Nia back to her senses or even made her freeze up. However, it did little more than annoy Nia right now. How can I calm down? Squire Nia Roja. Did you borrow that weapon from the Saucer King? Why was he so interested in it? Don't ask me irrelevant questions like that. More importantly, we need to find His Majesty. I saw him fall to the east. We need to send out a rescue party. Surely, he must be dead. How could he be dead? How could His Majesty die? Nia instinctively grabbed Remedios, but Remedios easily swept her aside and Nia fell to the ground. Have you cooled off yet? Nobody could survive a fall from that height. Cooled off? You actually believe that demon's words? Captain, did you sell your soul to him? Remedios' expression changed, and then it seized up. Squire, damn you, there are things you can and can't say. She grabbed Nia's collar with tremendous force, and Nia found it hard to breathe. You two, calm down. Calm down right now. The paladins, priests, soldiers, and such hurriedly made their way between Nia and Remedios, and pulled him apart. Nia panted with all her might as she shouted, "We need to send out a team to rescue His Majesty. We can't waste our resources on that." How dare you call it a waste? Nia wanted to go up and punch Remedios, but the people between them stopped her. I've got nothing to say to you. Having cooled down a little, Nia addressed the people holding her. Could you let go of me? There's something I have to do. Where are you going? In response to that question, Nia looked at Remedios with an utterly incredulous expression on her face. What kind of eyes are those? Is that how a squire should look at a paladin? HMPH, Nia snorted. First, I will be asking His Highness the Prince to organize a rescue party for the Saucer King. After that, I will go straight to the Sorceress Kingdom and tell them exactly what happened to His Majesty, and then I will ask for aid for His Majesty. Given the circumstances, nothing good would come of going to the Sorceress Kingdom. Even so, she was still the Saucer King's squire, and she had to complete her duty. Nia was unsure if she could safely reach the Sorceress Kingdom from here, but she had to go, even if it meant her death. Oh, if you're going to the Sorceress Kingdom, let me go with you, Bairuho-san. The person who spoke was a middle-aged ex-soldier, who had retired and become a hunter. He had been lauded for his archery and had joined Nia's unit. Don't worry about me, I'm old enough as it is. I don't have much longer left. Baldum-san. From his tone, she knew that he understood what sort of fate awaited him even if they reached the Sorceress Kingdom safely. Hey, Nia-chan. Don't forget me. You too, Kodina-san. I'll go too, Lil Miss. Not for you, but if it's for the Saucer King then it can't be helped. Even you, Mena-san. All the skilled people in Nia's unit stepped forward, one after the other. With their help, it might be possible for them to reach the Sorceress Kingdom safely. However, thank you very much. But everyone, could you join the rescue party? What are you saying? You were all gathered to rescue the Holy Kingdom and the suffering people from the clutches of that demon, weren't you? Where are your priorities? What are you saying, Captain? Could anything be more important than rescuing His Majesty? Of course. Right now, at this very moment, how many people of the Holy Kingdom do you think there are living in the hell the demi-humans made for them? Could anything be more important than rescuing them? Of course. That's. What on earth are you doing? What's all this shouting for? The argument immediately stopped where the interloper showed up. It was Casbond. Captain Custodio, should you not have returned immediately? Where is His Majesty? What about Jaldri? What happened? Could somebody please explain? Casbond sounded like he was completely lost, and his voice echoed loudly in the crushing silence. The meeting room was very cramped. It was filled with paladins, priests, nobles who had been prisoners until recently, and honorary paladins. That said, there were no better rooms for them, since Jaldri had destroyed the one which Casbond had previously used. Casbond had called an emergency meeting after receiving a report from a paladin, and he had instructed all key personnel to gather in this room. After everyone had assembled, Casbond and Remedios entered with quick strides. Everyone bowed as the prince entered. Nia was one of them, because she held no grudges against Casbond. Casbond stood in front of everyone and began to speak. Thank you all for coming here. I wish to discuss the course of action we will adopt in the future. Although it was supposed to be a discussion, there was only one thing Nia had to do, and she was certain that it was the right thing to do. Just as Nia was about to speak, Casbond raised his hand to stop her. I'm sure everyone has concerns of their own, but I pray you will hear me out first. Casbond slowly swept his gaze over everyone gathered here. I believe many people have witnessed the extent to which Jaldabaoth's strength exceeds our imagination. Yes. While I regret to say this, we must accept the fact that nobody in this country can triumph over him. Several people frowned in silence, then peeked at Remedios, who had been hailed as the strongest in the Holy Kingdom. After learning that she agreed with Casbond's opinion, hints of fear and disappointment appeared on their faces. However, it is too early to give in to despair. If we cannot defeat him, then we will derail his plans in some other way and make him give up on trying to conquer the Holy Kingdom. We will not drive him out directly, but indirectly." Caspond waited several seconds for his words to sink in, and then spoke his conclusion. "What we will do is slaughter all the demi-humans he leads." "Why are we doing that?" Caspond saw someone asking a question and nodded to them. "In the past Jaldari made trouble in the kingdom. Back then, he fought a certain warrior in a duel, and then he lost and ran away. At that time, he led an army of demons but not an army of demi-humans. In other words, he came to lead the demi-human army after losing to that warrior." Caspond looked around, as if to see if everyone understood. In other words, he is using the demi-human army as meat shields to avoid being forced into a one-on-one battle with that warrior. Didn't Jaldari say something like that when he defeated His Majesty? Something about leading the demi-human army almost becoming meaningless, or something. It made sense. Back then, they did not understand it, but after hearing that explanation, it was hard to think of any other reason. In other words, the demi-human army is like armor and stamina for when he fights that warrior again. What will Jaldari do if he loses the demi-human army? Will he remain stripped of his armor and stamina, when that warrior might appear in front of him again at any moment? Or perhaps, would he choose to flee? I see. Then do you intend to abandon this city, defeat the southern demi-human army, and then join forces with the south to drive out the demi-humans? A priest asked. He was answered by one of the rescued nobles. That would be good. Thanks to the Saucer King's power, almost 40,000 demi-humans have been wiped out. The demi-humans have lost a great deal of their fighting strength, no? The remainder ought to be staring down the south. If we rally all the people this city has rescued for an all-out attack and strike them from the back in a pincer attack, we ought to be able to rout the demi-human army. That way, we will be able to join up with the southern forces and take back our land. I propose the opposite. We will take back the closest major city in the west, which is the northern stronghold of Kalincha. Why is that, may I ask? Exactly. All the major cities to the west such as Kalincha, Pra, Remoon and the capital of Hoburns will be very hard to take. Many lives will be lost. Why don't we fight the southern demi-humans instead? Would destroying the demi-humans' fighting power not fit more with your plans, my prince? I see. All of your concerns are valid. I am grateful for the fact that many of the people present here are wise. However, is that an action which everyone can understand? There were baffled looks on the faces of many of the people present. How about this? Going to the south implies that we will be abandoning, though it is only temporary, we are still abandoning all the imprisoned people that we will not rescue as a result. Can the masses, can the people understand that? But that makes more sense. There'll be a higher chance of saving them. No. You're a baron, I believe. Caspond turned to look at the middle-aged man who had asked the question. Why, yes. I believe we met once, my prince. Ah, just so. Now, have all the people of your domain been rescued? Ah, no, not yet. I was imprisoned when I took the field beside Her Majesty, so I don't know about my domain. I see. So when you join up with the southern forces and take back the north, people might say you fled to the south. The nobleman's face froze up. When one thought calmly about it, the nobleman was right. However, there was no guarantee that everyone, especially those who were writhing in agony, would be able to see the sense in what the nobleman had said. It was possible that there would be people who would say, "Why didn't you save us earlier? Our families were slaughtered by the demi-humans," and turn the blades of their hatred on the nobles. Nia had seen such people before. However, nobody had said that in the prison camps which the Saucer King had liberated, given his overwhelmingly potent magic, which could sometimes wreck city walls in a single blast, and the fact that he was the king of another nation, nobody would dare take their anger out on him. Also, I had been intending to speak to the landholders one-on-one after this. In this case, we might as well do it now. We are all exhausted. In contrast, what will the nobles of the South do? In particular, what will the other nobles do about nobles who have abandoned their fiefs? The cloying stench of politics and power began to fill the air. While it sounded unbelievable to Nia, was this what the nobles wanted? They nodded repeatedly. My prince, our domains. I want you to pretend that you did not hear what comes next. That is because I cannot guarantee you anything. However, the southern nobles will probably grow more powerful all of a sudden. That is why you must pick the best move to make, with an eye for what happens after the war. A moment please. One of the paladins called out to him. How can we shed more of the people's blood for courtly disputes? Indeed. Indeed. The priest called Siliako shouted in a voice which was said to have been trained for volume. What's important is how to save more people. Driving out the demi-humans doesn't mean it's all over, you know. If the South takes all the credit, then we'll have a hard time refusing the demands of the Southern nobles. And there's no guarantee that they won't impose heavy taxes on the exhausted people. Now that the Holy Queen is dead, it would be very bad if the next Holy King were to be chosen by the Southern nobles. However, if we can show concrete results with our strength, then at least. There were two factions in the room now. They were the nobles faction and the paladins and priests faction. Both sides were at odds. Speaking of Remedios, the paladins were trying to spoon-feed her a simplified version of what the prince had said. Nia was not part of either faction. She simply followed the flow of the conversation in silence. That was because Nia had already made up her mind about what she would be doing, so it did not matter what conclusion they reached in the end. Rather, she wanted to bring up her own suggestion and set out as soon as possible. That said, talking about irrelevant things here will only ruin the mood, and people who might have helped me won't come to my aid. After listening to numerous boring topics, she decided to toss the ball back to Caspond once both sides had worn themselves out with arguing. My prince brought up this topic. Perhaps we should let him finish speaking. Like I said earlier, intend to take back Kalincha. This is also militarily advantageous. In truth, this city is far too cramped, and much of it has already been destroyed. Living here is difficult, so I would like to have a larger, more solid home base. In addition, by taking back a major city, we'll have an advantage when dealing with the southern nobles. Also, Kalincha was meant to stop enemy advances, so it ought to have ample stores of military supplies, assuming they haven't been moved out yet. I support the proposal to secure a better base. I'm a little uneasy about the sanitation of a city like this. Many people are shivering from the cold too. However, they went on to say, we need to avoid large numbers of deaths. Indeed. That is why it is the best time to attack the enemy strongholds. After all, Jaldri cannot take action now. There was no telling how long Jaldabaoth's wounds would take to heal, but surely he would recover before the demi-human army was completely defeated. In addition, it was very unlikely that he would show his face before making a complete recovery. After knowing of the existence of a powerful warrior like Morn, he would surely take the possibility of Morn showing up into consideration before doing anything. Therefore, if he acted, it would not happen before he was almost completely recovered. That said, once Jaldri took the field, it would not matter how much force the Holy Kingdom could muster. Therefore, they had to take the fortress now. So that was it. After listening to that agreeable explanation, Nia expressed her approval as well. In that case, it seems the only thing you are unhappy with is the number of people who must die for this. Can I take that to mean that you will give me your support if I can minimize the number of deaths? Everyone present nodded, with the exception of Remedios. Nia did not mind either way, but after considering the flow of the conversation, she realized that it would be bad if only one person was not nodding, and so she nodded with everyone else. As for Remedios, several people looked at her face and saw that she did not seem to have any special reasons for what she did, so they chose to ignore her. It's decided then. We will discuss the details of retaking Kalincha afterwards. Now then, our next item. Caspon sighed loudly and then turned to Nia. This concerns the death of the Saucer King. My prince, I sincerely apologize, but I hope you will amend that statement immediately. The Saucer King's death remains in question. That was simply what Jaldari told us. It would be foolish to take a demon's words at face value. Nia eyed Remedios and continued. I think it is more likely that he is trying to deceive us. In that case, why has he not come back? He can cast teleportation spells, can't he? Perhaps he was immobilized by his wounds. Perhaps he is out of mana. There could be any number of reasons for it. Remedios did not ask any further. That's true. That's why I'd like to hear from all of you. What do you think we should do? There's no point in asking what we should do. Nia shouted, forcing the words out like she was trying to strain him out through her teeth. I think we should dispatch a rescue party and relay this news to the Sorceress Kingdom at the same time. If possible, I would like to be the messenger. I see. That's what you think, Squire Byroha. How about the others? As Caspond looked over the gathered people, one of the nobles spoke up. I have a question. While the Saucer King was supposed to have gone down in the east, considering we will be mounting a rescue operation in demi-human-controlled territory, would it not be better to wait until we have some concrete intelligence before? It'll be too late by then. Nia immediately shot back. The more we delay, the more His Majesty will be exposed to danger. I suggest we make our rescue as soon as possible. The majority agreed with Nia's opinion. What she said made perfect sense. In that case, we ought to send out a search party at the same time as the envoys to the Sorceress Kingdom. I have something I would like to confirm with you, since you have the role of His Majesty's squire. Do you think the Saucer King told the people of his country that he was coming to the Holy Kingdom? Nia began to think. I apologize, but I am not sure. However, I feel it would not be strange for him to have told the people of the Sorceress Kingdom, because there were times when he returned to his country with teleportation spells. In that case, I feel we should not send an envoy to the Sorceress Kingdom. Why? Nia glared at the noble who had done nothing but naysay. The noble retreated 2 steps and his face went pale under that glare. The people around that noble also backed away from him. No, please calm down and listen. That is because it will bring trouble. Wait. Please calm down and listen to me. When you think about it normally, the possibility exists that the Sorceress Kingdom's undead armies would take revenge on us, am I wrong? And revenge would be one thing. They might annex the Holy Kingdom as well. And why is that? Who's to say the Saucer King was not aiming for that all along? Excuse me. Nia was so angry that she actually felt dizzy. In that case, permit me to ask a question of my own. If His Majesty returned to his country by teleportation, what will he think of the Holy Kingdom, who knew what happened but said nothing? Everyone she could see nodded in agreement. Amidst all this, Remedios spoke. Well, it can't be helped then, can it? Our country doesn't have the luxury of doing that now. All we have to do is apologize after everything is over, right? Even if you. Nia was so worked up that she was about to shout, and then she heard the sound of clapping from beside her. She looked over, and saw that it was Casbond. Since the prince wanted to speak, all Nia could do was remain silent. Squire Byroha, allow me to pick the people who will go to the Sorceress Kingdom. How about that? After all, if we send over a mere squire as a messenger, won't the other country think we're making fun of them? That is as you say. His explanation made perfect sense. Under normal circumstances, they would surely pick a country's ambassador over a squire who had borrowed a magic bow from the Sorcerer King. However, would he really send out an envoy? She found that part hard to believe. Even so, it would be very bad to show that she did not trust the prince's words. I am glad that you understand. In that case, please allow me to lead several people to the east. Indeed, I would very much like to send you as well, but we still do not know where the Sorcerer King fell. He might be 10 kilometers away or 100. If things go badly, he might have fallen into the Abelian Hills, which Jaldari controls. Even if I allowed you to go to such a desolate place, would you have any means of finding the Sorcerer King? Nia could not answer him. Finding where the demi-humans lived in unfamiliar terrain was an impossible task. She could easily imagine the scouting team meeting with difficulties and being wiped out. Serving in the hills, slipping past demi-human observation and gathering information, Casbond counted off on his fingers. If you go there without preparing, you will simply be killing yourself indirectly, and what good is a rescue party that ends in failure? Then do you have another way? Of course. How could there be? As she thought about that question, it was easily answered. Nia's eyes went wide in surprise, and then Casbond adjusted himself before telling Nia the answer. All you need is to find someone who knows the hills. Nia blinked, and Casbond smiled to her. Listen. All we need to do is to take a demi-human captive and have him lead the way. Would it not be safer to order a demi-human to act as your guide? Indeed, that was the case. Humans would be taking an absurd risk entering that land. However, it would be a different matter if they had guides. However, there were also problems with it which could not be ignored. If they simply threatened a demi-human prisoner into showing him the way, then if the prisoner was willing to sacrifice himself to kill them all, the search party would be going to their deaths. The orcs she had met earlier seemed like the type who did not care about whether they lived or died. They would need trustworthy demi-humans, but where would they find those? What could she do to make a demi-human act as a reliable guide? Nia racked her brains, but when she thought of demi-humans, she could only think of them trying to kill her, and she could not imagine them accepting an offer to turn their coats. No, the orcs and the Grand King Bussa felt like humans. I see. Take their relatives hostage. No, if we could take a king like Bussa prisoner, his tribe would probably obey us. Or on the other hand, the Anga tribe might put up stiff resistance. Besides, how would they capture a mighty demi-human king like Bussa? As Nia wandered aimlessly in a mental labyrinth, chasing an answer she could not find, the room's door swung open and a paladin barged in. He panted heavily and looked around the interior of the room, but he approached Casbond instead of Remedios. Perhaps he did not want others to hear what news he had. He brought the prince to a corner of the room and whispered in his ear, but Nia's keen hearing picked up snippets of their exchange. Among them, the last piece of information piqued her interest. He had said, "Made demons. Gentlemen, something urgent has come up. Unfortunately, the meeting will end here. I hope you will begin working on ways to take back Kalincha. Also, Captain Custodio, come with me." End chapter.